happens
an invisible ink.
what happens when you have a multitude of incredibly intelligent people is that you have an even more dynamic multitude of great ideas and great concepts, which obviously you can see here, because if you're as smart as we are, you can actually see the writing on here. The first premise that we came up with was that everyone has to think like a mayor. And that's not because I said it, it's just because it is. But what we found was that there was no poverty of plans. And I thought that was one of the best quotes that was written today. There's no poverty of plans. What we came up with when we looked at from the large group strategy side, so I'm just going to ask you to imagine it, okay? Right here, in our large group.
Picture if you can.
Picture if you can, in our large group. And what we saw was something that I think a lot of you have said. Really, this is all about asset mapping. Because when you look at transportation as a whole, there are so many components to transportation and so many dynamics within each portion of those transportation modes that you really can't just simply say, we're going to look at any one piece, whether it's ports and water transportation, personal people transportation, freight transportation, whatever the case is, we have to look at it as a whole. So we found out that it's too dynamic. The second part under the large group strategy that we really saw was that you also have to have a transportation caucus. And this is one of the best ideas that came out of this group, which is the tri-state area. And this is important. Local and state transportation people to come together in a caucus to talk about the future. Because the one thing that is missing in all of this is that future visioning that we talk about in the OECD report. I just want to mention, as an aside, judges, I'm the first one to bring up the OECD report. So, in the OECD report, we talk about the fact that this megatropolis is going to be growing by the time of 2050, and candidly, we're not ready for it. So, the Transportation Caucus is important. It breaks down the silos and allows everybody to work on those assets and that data. The last part of it that we found incredibly important was the marketing and branding. Because if you want to create this great transportation network and bring all these people to these regions, are you branding the great assets that you have and also branding the opportunities that you have for the future? So those were others. Outcomes on the short term, which would I believe be in this area right here, and you can see that, is that we're going to have recognized assets. So we're going to recognize our assets immediately, and we're going to be able to sell those opportunities for the future. They're going to be based on and provide good decision making, because you can't make good decisions because so many people are reactive currently in the transportation modes that the only way to make good decisions based on the future and that 2050 plan that we're looking at is to recognize your assets and build on those assets and on the future. Right now what we have is a band-aid approach to fixing the problems, whatever those problems may be, and unfortunately that funding is never going to be enough. The last piece, which is, I believe, would be down here, which you can see in this area, is the consistency of data. And that cannot be underestimated. The consistency of data between the three states actually can be very different, not only from the local level, between the local and the state levels. So we have to make sure there's consistency of data. We want to see a website that everyone can work off of, so that if they want to get information on moving through those areas, they can get that data on the website, and it's a consistent data package. And the third is actually the funding support that we'd get from the local, state, and federal governments because of the data, the assets, and the future growth potential that we have there. One comment that came up that I thought was fantastic was to think sovereign. Instead of thinking about this as regions or states or counties or cities, to think sovereign. What would we think about if we start all over again and did this in a way that we all thought sovereign? So that is it for us. And I just want to say, judges, that you look lovely today. And I hope you enjoyed our presentation.